You're listening to Nocturnal Nightmares. While the world sleeps peacefully, we open the door to what lies beneath. The stories that surface in silence, the fears that rise in the dark. These are not dreams, they are reminders. Stay with us. And don't close your eyes just yet. Ignorance was the flimsy shield I carried into that cloistered pocket of the countryside. I sought sanctuary, an escape velocity from the city's tight embrace, its ceaseless, clamorous pulse. Weeks of untainted air, a mind swept clean. That was the prescription. Deceptively simple. Walls that weren't shared, a hearth breathing warmth into the chill. Solitude, my arrival, a Thursday afternoon affair, saw my tires crunching gravel, a fragile bubble of anticipation rising within me. The weekend promised languor. Simple fare simmered, pages turned beside a drowsing fire, surrender to the ancient sofa's embrace. But the first frost-kissed night shattered that idyll. Midday sun slanted through the door as I entered, my suitcase thudding onto worn floorboards. An immediate survey. The living room, cavernous beneath ceiling timbers that groaned like old bones under my weight, dominated by a vast stone hearth and its sentinel, a deep time-softened couch. The kitchen, a compact alcove, offered essentials: icebox, stove, a sink gazing through a solitary pane at a dense stand of nameless trees. A miasma of stale linen and dust thickened the bedroom air, testament to prolonged vacancy. Threadbare cobwebs, like forgotten lace, adorned the closet's shadowed corners. I swept them aside with a reluctant hand, banishing thoughts of nocturnal skitterings. A 15-minute drive yielded sustenance: tins of soup, dense bread, bottled water, procured from the nearest outpost of civilization. Beside it, a lean-to stacked with split logs. The vendor, weathered as the wood itself, offered a caution with my purchase. The mercury here plunged deeper after dusk than outsiders ever reckoned, even on temperate days. Evening drew in, and I coaxed the hearth to life. Logs nested, kindling tucked beneath, a struck match birthing hesitant flickers that soon bloomed into a hungry dance. The room filled with a soft percussive crackling. Enveloped in a thick blanket, sunk into the sofa, I watched, a profound stillness settling over me. The fire braided light and shadow on the walls, a hypnotic ballet. City anxieties, deadlines, the gnawing stress, all receded, dissolved in the amber glow. Perhaps 20 minutes slipped by in this reverie, before an aberrant flicker snagged my attention. The flames contorted, momentarily coalescing. I leaned in, eyes narrowed. Was that a visage? Ephemeral, indistinct, yet the suggestion of eyes, the curve of a cheek, a chin limned in firelight. Surely a trick of combustion, an accidental Rorschach in the burning wood. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes. Gone. Vanished as swiftly as it had formed, yet an icy current traced my forearms, my mouth suddenly parched. Coincidence? I insisted. Shadow play. Still, disquiet lingered. I rose, fetched water, downed it quickly. Returning, I jabbed at the logs with the iron poker, disrupting their configuration, hoping to dispel the illusion. The phantom face remained absent. As the blaze mellowed to pulsing embers, I added another log, seeking sustained warmth, then drifted into uneasy sleep on the couch. A bone-deep chill roused me near to. The fire, A ghost of itself offered only feeble orange winks against the cavernous dark. My breath plumed visibly in the frigid air. Shivering, rubbing warmth back into my arms, I rebuilt the pyre. Tinder caught, new flames spiraled upward. I stood back, pulse hammering. A heavy, expectant rhythm. I was waiting, and it returned. The shape resolved within the inferno, sharper this time, undeniable. Features clarified, lips parted and closed. A silent, desperate mouthing, my chest constricted, breath hitched, shallow and fast. A prickling awareness crawled over my skin. I blinked furiously, willing it away, but the fiery mask held for 5, maybe 6, agonizing seconds before dissolving back into the chaotic swirl of combustion. I retreated, legs trembling beneath me, stumbling backward until the wall arrested my flight. Clutching a sofa cushion like a shield, I felt my heart battering my ribs. A pungent, acrid odor seeped from the chimney. Damp soot, the stale breath of long-dead fires. Smoke, thicker now, eddied beneath the rafters, tracing slow patterns along the aged wood. Hallucination? Fatigue? I scrubbed at my face, grasping for reason. Sleep here was impossible. I fled to the bedroom, bolting the door, burrowing fully clothed beneath the thin blankets. My skin felt cold, damp. My breathing, a ragged counterpoint to the silence. Sleep, when it finally came through sheer exhaustion, was shallow, haunted by the memory of silent, burning lips. Morning found me hollowed out, a knot tight in my gut, head pounding from fractured sleep. After forcing down dry bread, I flung open every window, inviting the crisp air to purge the lingering scent of smoke that clung stubbornly to the living room. A fine black dust coated the hearth's edges. Cleaning the ashes became a ritual of denial, my hands betraying a tremor I attributed to fatigue. I sought refuge outdoors, wandering the property, exploring a faint path, disappearing into the woods. Sunlight on my shoulders, the rustle of dry leaves underfoot. For a few precious hours, a fragile normalcy asserted itself. But as dusk bled into the sky, the temperature plummeted, drawing me back inside, back to the silent challenge of the fireplace. Just shadows, I reasoned, imagination. My fingers, stiff with apprehension, arranged the logs. I struck the match, a small act of defiance. Flames climbed, crackled. For a moment, all seemed ordinary. And then, there, the face materialized, coalescing from the heart of the blaze. It lingered, persistent. This time, the eyes, burning embers themselves, seemed to shift, to scan the room with unnerving focus. The mouth worked, opening and closing in a silent, frantic gasp, as if starved for air. Yet only the snap and hiss of consuming wood reached my ears. My hands involuntarily curled into fists. A profound weakness invaded my legs. I gripped the sofa's arm for support. Every nerve ending screamed alert, the fine hairs on my neck erect. My pulse throbbed, a frantic drum against my eardrums. Above, the smoke pooled again, tendrils creeping along the beams like searching fingers. I backed away instinctively, colliding with the kitchen counter, my gaze locked on the hearth. Did the fiery eyes track my retreat? It felt so. A desperate impulse sent me fumbling beneath the sink for the fire extinguisher. I hefted its cold weight, nozzle aimed, finger hovering over the trigger, but hesitated. Was there some mundane cause? A blockage? An object lodged within? Yet primal instinct shrieked against closer inspection. Keep back. Suddenly it dissolved, melting back into the undifferentiated roar of the fire. I stood near the counter, breath tearing from my lungs, vision swimming with adrenaline. My knuckles clenched around the extinguisher shone white. Slowly, deliberately, I set it down. My throat was sandpaper. Swallowing water felt like forcing down stones. My hands shook violently, the air hung thick with smoke and a clawing, vaguely fungal undertone I couldn't place. Escape. I needed to escape the house. Jacket pulled on, keys clutched, I fled to the car, chest tight, breath constricted. The highway blurred past until the neon glow of a roadside diner offered asylum. Perched on a cracked vinyl stool at the counter, I ordered coffee, seeking its mundane warmth. My fingers drummed a nervous tattoo. I studied the laminated menu with fierce, unseeing concentration, avoiding the waitress's gaze. Gradually, the frantic hammering in my chest subsided. My shoulders eased fractionally. 2 hours I lingered there, over coffee and a greasy burger, postponing the inevitable. Returning near midnight, the house felt tomb cold. The hearth held only a scattering of dying embers. I sat in the oppressive dark, wrestling with the decision. Light the fire again? My muscles coiled at the thought. The very air seemed to weigh more, thick with unspoken things. A tremor ran through me, unrelated to the chill. Leaving now, packing in the dead of night, driving exhausted. It felt insurmountable. And beneath the fear, a darker impulse stirred. Curiosity. A perverse need to know if it would return. One last time, standing close, match trembling in my hand, I touched flame to kindling. As the fire took hold, I retreated, watching, waiting. Minutes stretched, marked only by the fire's hungry consumption. I prodded the logs, searching for any natural feature, a knot, a grain pattern that might mimic a face. Nothing, just wood, rough barked and fractured. And then, abruptly, it was there, manifesting dead center, seeming to strain forward, pressing against the fiery veil as if seeking escape. The lips drew back, cheeks hollowing in a terrible, silent inhalation. Only the sibilant hiss of burning sap and the sharp crackle of timber broke the silence. Vertigo washed over me. My head pulsed, threatening unconsciousness. My heart felt dangerously overfull, ready to rupture. I fought to keep my eyes open, fixed on the apparition, my hands spasmed uncontrollably, breath soared in ragged gasps, cold sweat beaded on my brow despite the room's chill. The face, its expression was pure torment. I felt an answering pressure in my own chest, an empathetic suffocation, as though the flames were drawing me in. A tingling numbness spread through my hands. Inhaling, I caught the acrid smoke again, laced with that pervasive, musty odor. And the smoke, it wasn't behaving right. It didn't rise directly, but spilled out, hugging the ceiling in thin, coilant ribbons gathering in the corners, weaving patterns that seemed to creep across the room's upper reaches. My eyes burned, each breath felt inadequate, scraped raw. A cough tore from my throat. Stumbling backward, fumbling for the window latch, I finally forced it open. Icy night air flooded in. I gulped it down, vision momentarily blurring. Whirling back toward the hearth. Gone. The face had vanished. The flames burned with placid normality, smoke now obediently drafting up the chimney. Still trembling, I collapsed onto the sofa, struggling to absorb the reality of it. My pulse hammered in my ears. Despite the open window, the room's atmosphere remained stagnant, heavy. The soft pop of the fire, the groan of timbers overhead, every sound amplified, jarring. An hour passed in watchful paralysis, too frightened to seek the bedroom, too drained to pace. Each creak, each settling noise jolted me. My eyes kept returning to the fireplace, half expecting the face to bloom again. It did not. The logs crumbled to ash. The heat bled away. Wrapping myself in another blanket, I succumbed to exhaustion on the couch. The window left ajar. Sleep was a battlefield, punctuated by violent starts that left me gasping, heart pounding. Once, I surfaced, convinced I'd heard a whisper brush past my ear. But the only sound was the kitchen clock's indifferent ticking. The following days were a blur of futile efforts. I located a stiff brush in the outbuilding and attacked the chimney flue, dislodging cascades of soot, scraping until my arms ached. A call to a local chimney sweep yielded only a promise of a visit weeks away. I purchased wood from a different source, hoping the phenomenon was tied to the original logs. Useless. Whenever the hearth was lit, the visage returned, at least once. Each manifestation lingered longer than the last, the silent mouthing growing more urgent, conveying a palpable, voiceless anguish. The smoke, too, retained its unsettling tendency to drift and pool before finally ascending. An attempt to document it with my phone proved fruitless. The recordings showed only dancing flames and flares of light, ephemeral flickers that hinted at nothing. Yet, to my naked eye, the face was undeniably, terrifyingly present, as if it existed in a dimension technology could not perceive. Each night descended, bringing exhaustion and the suffocating weight of the house's stale air. My thoughts circled endlessly, seeking purchase on an explanation that wasn't madness. Sharing this felt impossible. The inevitable diagnoses, stress, fatigue, a need for therapy, were useless shields against the reality of what I saw. Yet, a stubborn kernel of need persisted. To understand. The walls seemed to press inward. The phantom scent of old smoke permeated everything, my clothes, my hair, my very lungs. Sleep offered no respite, leaving me drenched in sweat each morning, muscles locked in tension. Even trips for supplies became ordeals, my gaze skittering, certain my unease was visible. Reflection showed a stranger, haunted eyes sunk in bruised hollows, a perpetual furrow branding my brow. I braced constantly for some terrible climax, some escalation beyond the silent pleading, the tormented gaze. But it only watched, its anguish a constant, eroding presence. It ground me down, this vigil born of terror and fascination. After nearly 2 weeks, battered by sleeplessness, nerves scraped raw, I conceded defeat. One stark morning, I gathered my belongings, loaded the car, turned the key in the lock. A final glance into the living room revealed only stillness. The cold, vacant maw of the fireplace, the heavy air. I turned my back and drove away. Forgetting is not an option. The image is seared behind my eyes. The way the face strained, the smoke coiled. Even now, in the presumed safety of my own space, the flicker of a simple candle can trigger a pause, an involuntary tightening, a half-conscious wait for something to form in the flame. Nothing ever does. Yet the feeling lingers, of being observed, of a presence just at the periphery. That silent mouth opening and closing in the fire. What unutterable thing did it strive to voice? I never learned. I find I have no desire to. That house remains a scar on my memory, and no hearth's glow will ever again seem entirely benign. I will always see those eyes, burning, watching from the flickering depths. The sepulchral silence of the basement fractured at precisely 3:42 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. That timestamp burned itself onto my memory the instant the susurrus began, confirmed by the phone I reflexively checked. For 6 hours, I'd navigated a labyrinth of cardboard sarcophagi, exhuming relics of a life concluded 3 weeks prior with my father's passing. This subterranean vault, the final frontier in purging the house before its sale next month, hadn't felt my mother's tread since her stroke 5 years back. My father, a curator of everything, had let it accrue, sediment of decades. The sounds began as mere phantoms of acoustics, aqueous whispers I first dismissed as the house's old circulatory system, the groan of water through aged pipes, but then fragments of language coalesced. Time, not time yet, and must wait. Muffled, indistinct, as if filtered through the dense weave of reality itself. They emanated from the basement's furthest reach, a shadowed alcove behind the hulking, rust-weeping water heater. Nothing lay beyond that corner but sheer, unyielding foundation stone. A clammy film glued my shirt to my spine. The air hung thick, tasting of dust and stillness. I rose from a garden spilling forth ghosts of Christmases past, brittle ornaments and tangled lights, and moved toward the source. A single, naked bulb, suspended from the low ceiling, cast a jaundiced, insufficient glow that faltered before reaching the far wall, leaving it steeped in shadow. As I advanced, the murmurs intensified, sharpening. Drawing near, and almost ready. My fingers, trembling slightly, found the antiquated porcelain toggle switch near the heater. Its decisive clack ricocheted off the concrete confines. A second bulb flickered reluctantly, then blazed, drenching the corner in stark, clinical light. Nothing. Utterly void, save for the skeletal fingers of cobwebs and the desiccated husks of insects. Yet the voices persisted, undeterred by illumination. He is present. Clear as struck crystal, a man's voice, resonant and strangely serene, sounding as if it originated beside my very ear. Yes, at last, echoed a woman's voice, taut with an unnerving urgency. I spun, eyes darting, the basement unfurled around me, an empty expanse punctuated by stacked boxes like forgotten cairns. Furniture shrouded in spectral white sheets. My father's workbench dormant under a shroud of dust. Barren. Vacant. A frantic drumbeat hammered against my ribs. Sweat traced cold paths down my temples. Fumbling the phone from my pocket, I activated the camera, its small lens a desperate, unblinking eye. Is anyone there? The question fractured midway, my voice alien. We have waited such a long time, the man's voice replied, impossibly, from the space I occupied. 37 years, the woman's voice interlaced with his. A sudden chill permeated the stagnant air. My breath plumed unseen. On the phone screen, only the stark, empty corner stared back. I retreated, step by cautious step, keeping the camera fixed on the spot. Who are you? What is it you want? You know us, Lenny. The woman's voice gentled, intimate. You spoke with us when you were very small. A debilitating weakness invaded my legs. Only my closest family ever called me Lenny, a name I'd shed around age 10. The very year my solitary descents into this basement ceased abruptly. Impossible. I continued backing away until my shoulders met the rough wood of the stairs. You aren't real. This can't be happening. We are as real now as we ever were. The man's voice countered, seeming to drift closer. We watched you grow, observed you through the floorboards. We heard your first uncertain steps, the shape of your first words. The night you tumbled from your bed, broke your arm, and wept softly until dawn. Vertigo seized me. Dark motes danced at the periphery of my vision. That night, I remembered. 6 years old, the fall, the pain, the fear of waking my parents. Lying in the dark, stifling sobs, convinced that faint, soothing voices from below murmured assurances that all would be well. Stop it! My back pressed hard against the unyielding stairs. Just stop! You must help us, Lenny, the woman's voice implored, frayed with an ancient sorrow. There can be no peace for us until the truth is known. What truth? The words escaped before volition could intervene. Regarding what transpired here before your parents acquired this place, the man's voice hardened, gaining an edge of steel. Regarding what lies interred beneath this very floor. My phone slipped from my grasp, its impact sharp on the concrete. The screen spiderwebbed but remained illuminated, recording still. There's nothing under the floor. Every square inch of this subterranean space was familiar territory. It's solid concrete. My father had it inspected when they bought the property. The inspector, alas, hadn't probed sufficiently deep. But you recall, don't you? The dreams you once endured. The screaming? I did. Night terrors that had stalked my elementary school years. Desperate cries muffled by walls, pleas for rescue. My parents, concerned, had sought the counsel of a child psychologist who diagnosed an overstimulated imagination amplified by grief over my grandfather's recent death. Childhood anxieties, mere dreams. Were they? The woman's voice seemed to shift, now originating from behind me. Why did you cease venturing down here alone? Why did you plead with your parents to relocate your bedroom to the house's opposite side, far from the space directly above this corner? My legs buckled. I landed heavily on the bottom step, hot tears blurring my sight. This isn't real. Fatigue. I've been down here too long. The dust, the stress. Leo Julian Vance. The man's voice sliced through my desperate rationalizations, resonant with authority. We require your assistance. Our vigil has endured long enough. It was then I saw it. A hairline fracture. A thin filament of darkness marring the concrete surface precisely where the voices seemed most concentrated. It hadn't been there earlier. My phone lay nearby, its recording light a steady crimson eye. Crawling forward on hands and knees, I snatched it up, directing the lens at the fissure. As I watched through the cracked screen, the line widened, propagated. A dark, viscous fluid began to ooze from the breach. The stench struck first. Corruption, profound and ancient decay. I gagged, stomach churning. Look more closely. Both voices commanded in eerie unison. See what they sought to conceal. The crack yawned into a chasm. Something pale gleamed within the Stygian seepage. Hands shaking uncontrollably, I engaged the camera's zoom. Bone. Unmistakably, a human finger bone. I scrambled backward, ascending the stairs crabwise, the phone still filming. The fractures radiated outward like shattering ice, exposing more skeletal fragments. A hand articulated in silent supplication, the curve of an arm. December 12th, 1982, the man's voice declared, rising in intensity. The day they extinguished our lives. The day they entombed us beneath quick-setting concrete and sold this house 2 months later to a hopeful young couple, anticipating their first child. My parents. They had closed on the house in February 1983, mere months before my birth. The authorities never located us. The woman's voice trembled. Our families remained lost in unknowing. We have lingered here beneath, watching, waiting for someone to heed us. Someone capable of hearing. The crack reached the foundation wall. More bones surfaced. A cage of ribs. The hollow sockets of a skull gazing upward from its premature grave. Why me? The question was a strangled whisper. Children perceive what adults elect to ignore. You sensed our presence. You attempted to convey it, but they convinced you otherwise, persuaded you it was unreal. The voices gained strength, resonating with the vindication. But you are here now. You possess the evidence. My phone screen displayed it all. The inexorably widening fissure, the emerging bones, the dark spreading stain that testified to violence and concealment. 2 more souls rest beneath this floor. The man's voice gentled unexpectedly. Hidden by men who believed their secrets were buried forever. But you found us, Lenny. Just as you were always destined to. I remained on those stairs for what felt like an eternity, documenting the grim exhumation. When the phone's battery finally succumbed, I used the old landline upstairs to contact the police. They initially dismissed it as a morbid prank, until I presented the video footage, until their forensic team began the careful demolition of the concrete. They unearthed 4 complete skeletons, 2 male, 2 female. All matched missing persons reports filed in late 1982. The house's previous owner, a building contractor, had vanished that same year, reportedly leaving the country with his business associate. Cold cases, frozen in time, now thawing under the harsh light of discovery. The voices still surface occasionally, though softer now, imbued with a sense of peace. Sometimes in the deep quiet of night, I fancy I hear a faint "thank you" drifting up through the floorboards of my apartment, miles away from that burdened basement. The house eventually sold, significantly below its market value, the gruesome story having saturated the local news. The new proprietors filled the basement cavity entirely, sealing it off. But the video file remains archived, though unwatched since that day. Certain truths demand remembrance, however fiercely we might strive for oblivion. Each December 12th, I place flowers on 4 grave sites in Pine Grove Cemetery. The headstones bear recent inscriptions, yet the dates etched upon them stretch back nearly 4 decades. My visits are brief, just long enough to murmur, "You're welcome," into the silent air. They haven't spoken to me directly since their remains were recovered. I believe that was the culmination of their long wait, simply needing someone to listen, someone to finally excavate the truth they had been screaming into the void for 37 years. I commit this account to permanence now because the knowledge feels too heavy for one soul. Not merely the discovery of bodies or the ensuing investigation. Those details found their way into print. But the voices, the reality that sometimes the departed cannot rest until they are truly heard, until an individual listens to the whispers from shadowed corners and finds the courage to illuminate what lies hidden. My phone screen shattered that day, but the recording endured, saved to the cloud. I have never shared it, never allowed another ear to hear those spectral voices narrating their end. Some truths, perhaps, are not meant for universal consumption, yet they remain truths nonetheless. Last month, the new owners razed the old house, erecting a sleek modern structure in its place. Yesterday, compelled by an unseen current, I drove past. The basement is obliterated, filled earth, yet I could swear, as I idled by, that faint whispers still emanated from that specific corner of the lot. No longer cries or screams, but quiet colloquy, like old acquaintances reconnecting after an age apart. I didn't stop, didn't exit the car. I merely drove on slowly, offering a silent nod. Some narratives conclude when the truth is unearthed. Some voices finally achieve silence when their message resonates. But their absence now doesn't negate their presence then. Murmuring in the darkness, waiting for a listener. The police officially closed the investigation last week. Both suspects were traced to Argentina. Extradition proceedings are underway. 4 families now possess answers. Fragments of closure for their long-lost loved ones. 4 sets of remains finally rest under named markers. And 1 fractured concrete floor yielded its decades-old secrets, prompted by voices that refuse to be silenced by earth and time. I avoid basements now. There's no need. My own home rests on a solid slab foundation. Yet, sometimes, when the world falls utterly quiet, I press my ear to the floor, listening, not for those specific voices. Their story has been told, their burden lifted, but as a reminder that truth possesses an insistent buoyancy, capable of rising to the surface regardless of how deeply one attempts to bury it. The child psychologist was mistaken. It was never merely dreams, never just an overactive imagination. Occasionally, children hear what adults cannot because they haven't yet mastered the art of ignoring the impossible, haven't learned to rationalize the inexplicable. Perhaps that is why they chose me, why they waited all those years until I returned. Old enough to act, yet young enough to recall the cadence of belief in voices from empty corners. The forensic analysis revealed the concrete was poured sequentially in distinct layers. 4 layers, one sealing each victim they hadn't perished simultaneously but days apart, each body interred beneath freshly poured concrete before the next life was taken. Methodical, the investigators termed it, calculated, an operation requiring time and patience. Time and patience, mirrored by the voices lingering in that corner, whispering their narrative ceaselessly until finally, someone truly heard. Tomorrow, I will replace my phone, acquire a new one, devoid of spectral echoes, but the video file remains, secured in digital amber, inaccessible. Some evidence resists destruction, even when the case is closed. Some voices merit preservation even after they have fallen silent. The nightmares have ceased. No more screaming behind phantom walls. No more disembodied voices uttering my childhood name in the dark. Nevertheless, I keep a nightlight burning. Old habits cling stubbornly, and certain corners, I now believe, deserve perpetual illumination. I find myself wondering, sometimes, if other basements exist like that one, holding other voices poised on the edge of hearing, other truths straining against the weight of concrete and concealment. But those are not my stories to uncover. I have recounted the only one I know, the only one I was destined to hear. The one that commenced with whispers in a shadowed corner and culminated with 4 souls finally finding their way home. Its arrival was unremarkable. A ghost white panel van materializing amidst the familiar curbside clutter. Just another utility vehicle, I thought, easily lost in the mundane tapestry of the street. But by the third dusk, its silent, unmoving vigil whispered of something insidious, something utterly wrong. Little did I comprehend that this anonymous vessel would anchor a maelstrom, dragging my existence toward the jagged edges of reason. My life, until that October, had been a study in quietude. Ilara, 32, navigating the pixelated landscapes of graphic design from a small house nestled in suburbia's unassuming embrace. Evenings were predictable symphonies of streaming services and the rare, welcome cadence of laughter shared with friends. Contentment resided in its measured simplicity, a rhythm I cherished. Change arrived unannounced, carried on the tired air of a late Tuesday. Exhausted from wrestling deadlines, mind adrift in project schematics, I swung my car into the drive. Headlights sliced through the deepening twilight, illuminating the unexpected. The stark white flank of that van parked directly opposite, anonymous, utilitarian, easily dismissed. A newcomer to the lane, a visitor dropping by a neighbor. The thought evaporated as I crossed my threshold, hunger demanding immediate attention. The van forgotten before the kettle boiled. Night 2, and there it stood, immutable in the same patch of asphalt. Coincidence? My rational mind insisted, a stubborn echo against rising unease. Yet later, framed in the darkened square of my bedroom window, the van pulsed with a subtle disquiet. Was that movement within its shadowed interior? A flicker behind the blank panels? A frisson of cold traced my spine, quickly batted away as baseless fear, the product of an overtaxed imagination. The third evening shattered denial. It waited, sentinel-like, its presence now undeniable, oppressive. Through a deliberately narrow sliver in the living room curtains, my pounding heart confirmed it. A distinct silhouette occupied the driver's seat, motionless. Who? Why here? The urge to summon help warred with the chilling absurdity of the situation. Reporting a legally parked vehicle? What crime could I name? Powerless, I retreated from the window, a silent, fervent prayer for its departure clinging to the air. Departure never came. Days bled into weeks, the van weaving itself inextricably into the fabric of my daily existence. Not a constant daytime fixture. It would vanish for hours, only to reappear with the fading light. Each nightfall heralded its return. A phantom, reappearing sometimes opposite, sometimes further down the curb, yet always angled, it seemed, towards my windows. My routines warped under the pressure of perceived surveillance. Curtains were drawn tight the moment I returned home. Evening respites on the front porch became a memory. Erratic departure and return times became my futile strategy against an unseen, unknown observer. Still, it waited. Still, it watched. Voices of reason, my friends offered soothing platitudes over coffee or phone lines. Just a work truck, Elara. Probably someone local. You're letting it get to you, seen patterns where there are none. But they hadn't witnessed its subtle, unnerving repositioning to keep me distantly in view when I attempted a bracing walk around the block. They hadn't felt the crushing, invisible weight of unseen scrutiny pressing down on their solitude. Evidence became my desperate obsession. My phone captured grainy, indistinct images. A logbook meticulously tracked its spectral arrivals and purposeful departures. Yet distance was its steadfast ally, always rendering the license plate an unreadable blur. Any attempt to close the gap, to walk purposefully towards it, sent it gliding silently away down the street, only to reappear later. A silent mockery of my frustrated efforts. Sleep became a forgotten country, its borders guarded by hypervigilance. Every nocturnal creak of the old house, every passing car, became a potential intrusion, jolting me awake. Dark, bruised shadows bloomed beneath my eyes. My focus at work fractured, deadlines becoming insurmountable peaks, and my patience frayed thin, sharp words escaping towards well-meaning colleagues and friends over the most trivial of matters. 3 weeks marinated in corrosive dread brought me, inevitably, to the precipice. It was the dead hour, near 2 in the morning, consciousness stubbornly clinging to wakefulness despite profound exhaustion. Then, the sharp, percussive retort of a car door slamming shattered the pre-dawn stillness. Heart leaping into my throat, I flew to the window, dread coiling low in my stomach. There it was. Not across the street, not down the block, but directly before my house, impossibly, terrifyingly close, and a figure was emerging from the driver's side. Raw panic clamped down, icy and absolute. This was it, the culmination. Whatever purpose lay behind the weeks of watching, it was unfolding now. Trembling fingers fumbled with my phone. The familiar touchscreen suddenly alien, dialing the 3 digits that felt both inadequate and my only lifeline. 911, what is your emergency? The voice on the line was calm, professionally distant. Someone's outside, I hissed, the whisper catching dry and ragged in my throat. Watching me. They've been watching me for weeks. They're right here now, Can you see the person, ma'am? Are they attempting entry? Peering again through the gap in the curtains, I saw the shape standing motionless beside the van, gaze fixed unwavering on my house. No, just standing there, looking, but please, you have to send someone. I'm terrified. All right, ma'am, stay calm. We're dispatching officers to your location now. Stay on the line with me, okay? Time stretched into an agonizing, elastic eternity. I remained tethered to the window, a prisoner in my own home, watching the silent, static tableau outside, praying for the swift arrival of flashing lights. Then finally, the strobing pulse of blue and red painted the street, slicing through the oppressive darkness. Relief washed over me, so potent it nearly buckled my knees. 2 cruisers slid to a halt, officers converging quickly on the van and its lone, waiting occupant. Muted conversation drifted towards me, indistinct fragments of sound. Moments later, a uniformed figure detached from the group and stood at my front door. Ma'am? Ilara? Could you step outside for a moment, please? Hesitantly, cautiously, I opened the door and emerged into the cool, damp night air. The figure by the van turned towards the sudden light spilling from my doorway. A woman. Mid-40s, perhaps, her face etched with a profound weariness, her eyes holding a haunted, distant look. Do you recognize this individual? The officer inquired, his voice calm but firm. Confusion warred with the lingering residue of fear. No, I managed, shaking my head slowly. I've never seen her before in my life. But that van, her van, it's been watching my house for weeks. The woman's voice, when it came, was fragile, trembling on the edge of breaking. Forgive me. Please forgive me. I never meant to frighten you. It's only you bear such a striking resemblance to my Chloe. Gently, patiently, the officer filled the stunned silence that followed. The woman's name was Miriam. Her daughter, Chloe, had vanished without a trace 2 years prior. Chloe, who apparently shared my height, my hair color, my general features, had last been sighted somewhere within the labyrinthine streets of this very neighborhood. Night after night, fueled by a desperate, dwindling hope, Miriam had driven these roads, scanning faces, windows, shadows, clinging to the impossible chance of a glimpse, a sign, anything that might lead her back to her lost child. The world tilted on its axis. My weeks of escalating terror, the paranoia, the carefully constructed narrative of imminent menace, all born not of malice, but of a mother's fractured heart, hunting for ghosts in the suburban dark. The tight knot of fear dissolved instantly, replaced by a profound, echoing sorrow that resonated deep within my chest. I'm so sorry. The words felt thin, inadequate against the weight of her reality. I didn't know. I had no idea. I thought. Miriam nodded, tears finally escaping, tracing paths down her worn cheeks. I understand. Approaching you, talking to you. It felt like risking the last fragile sliver of hope I had left. Statements were taken, The formalities observed. The police, commendably kind but firm, gently explained the distress her nightly vigils were causing, offering phone numbers for support networks, resources for families adrift in the same unimaginable limbo. As Miriam prepared to leave, guided towards her car by an officer, an impulse I hadn't anticipated moved me. I stepped forward, closing the small distance between us, and wrapped my arms around her. There was a moment of startled stiffness. Then she yielded, melting into the embrace. Quiet, heartbroken sobs shaking her slight frame. "I hope you find her," I whispered against her hair, the sentiment feeling both essential and utterly insufficient. The white van never haunted my street again. Its physical presence vanished, but its phantom impression lingered, reshaping my inner landscape. Weeks spent captive to escalating fear, constructing elaborate threats from ambiguous shadows, dissolved in the stark, sobering light of another's raw, unending grief. Miriam and Chloe occupied my thoughts frequently in the quiet moments. Curiosity, mingled with a strange sense of connection, led me one evening to a local meeting for families of the missing, hoping perhaps to see her face again in a different context. She wasn't there, but listening to the shared narratives of loss, the quiet desperation, the unwavering resolve offered a stark, humbling context for my own ordeal. My perceived nightmare, it turned out, was merely the reverberating echo of her lived ongoing tragedy. It was a harsh, unforgettable lesson in perception, a chilling reminder of how easily fear and isolation can distort reality, breeding monsters where none exist. But it was also an unexpected, poignant testament to the fierce, unyielding power of parental love, a force willing to scour the deepest darkness, night after night, for a faintest glimmer of impossible hope. I remain in the same house, on the same quiet street. But the night outside my window holds a different resonance now. Not one of lurking menace, but of myriad complex human stories, poignant and painful, unfolding silently in the shadows, just beyond the light. Sometimes the thing we dread most is simply another's sorrow, lost and searching for solace. The fluorescent tubes above hummed a sickly tune, bathing the rest stop washroom tiles in a pallor usually reserved for morgues. Cold water, sharp against my skin, did little to sluice the grit of 12 hours spent tracing asphalt veins across the country. My reflection surfaced in the mirror's silver depths as I reached for a coarse paper towel. Eyes shadowed, twin bruises testifying to sleepless nights and the hypnotic monotony of the highway. Those weary eyes were poised, unknowing, on the precipice of a vision that would etch itself permanently behind my lids. My name is Leo. This was meant to be straightforward, a pilgrimage towards sunshine. Clara, my girlfriend, and I were charting a course west, chasing a shared horizon in California. Days bled into one another, a smear of dashed white lines and lukewarm coffee from drive-through windows. Just past the witching hour, we drifted into this pocket of artificial light carved from the immense desert dark. The lot held the hulking silhouettes of a few slumbering trucks and one dented, nomadic RV. Clara had surrendered to sleep 100 miles back, her silhouette soft against the passenger window glass. "Hey," I whispered, a gentle nudge to her shoulder. "Stopping for a minute." Need anything? She surfaced slowly, blinking against the car's dome light, a startled owl. Water. Maybe chips? A nod. My wallet emerged from the console's clutter. Be right back. Hit the locks, yeah? Her murmured assent was already dissolving back into sleep. I lingered a moment, a faint smile touching my lips. Even travel-worn and rumpled, the sight of her settled something deep within me. Stepping out, the night air met me cool and clean, a welcome counterpoint to the car's stale warmth. My spine cracked in a satisfying cascade as I stretched towards the indifferent stars. Ahead, the rest stop building pulsed, a solitary beacon in the swallowing darkness. Nearing the entrance, my gaze snagged on a figure leaning against the brickwork, thumbing a cigarette whose ember flared like a malevolent eye. An unplaceable disquiet prickled my skin. Perhaps it was the way his gaze tracked my approach, or the grin stretched taut across his face as I passed. "Evening," his voice rasped, like dry leaves skittering on pavement. I offered a curt nod, lengthening my stride. The sooner this transaction was complete, the better. Inside, the brightness was jarring, the silence absolute, save for the echo of my own footfalls on the worn linoleum. Vending machines hummed expectantly. I procured 2 bottles of water, a bag of pretzels, Clara's chips, then turned towards the washroom. Which led me here, moments later, confronting my own haggard reflection, grappling with a nameless dread coiling in my gut. Hands dried, supplies gathered, I pushed outwards, eager for the sanctuary of the car, for Clara, only to nearly collide with a solid presence. The man from outside. He stumbled, a flurry of mumbled apologies. "'S'all right," I muttered, attempting to sidle past. He remained rooted. That unsettling smile bloomed again, fixing me in place. "Got a long haul ahead?" he inquired. His tone casual, yet weighted. A reluctant nod. Politeness warred with a rising tide of unease. "Yeah, California bound." "California," he echoed, rolling the word on his tongue like a foreign delicacy. "Long way off? Traveling solo?" A visceral chill traced my spine. Clara, alone in the dark car. "No," I stated, my voice firmer than I felt. "Girlfriend's waiting. We need to push on." He raised his hands, palms out, the smile unwavering. Right, drive careful." I pushed past him, the urge to glance back a physical itch. The cool air struck my face again as I exited, a bracing shock. I gulped it down, attempting to quell the sudden frantic rhythm in my chest. Our car sat reassuringly familiar amidst the transient metal shapes. Through the window, Clara's profile, head still tilted against the glass. I tapped lightly, not wanting to jolt her awake. Nothing. Deep asleep then. I tried the handle. Locked. Good, just as I'd asked. "Clara?" Louder this time, knuckles rapping against the cool pane. "Back now. Can you unlock?" Stillness. The disquiet from earlier curdled into genuine concern. I knocked again, sharper now. a frantic tattoo against the glass. "Clara, wake up!" Silence answered. My heart hammered against my ribs. Pressing my face close, I cupped my hands around my eyes, peering into the shadowed interior, trying to pierce the glare of the overhead lamps. The passenger seat gaped, vacant. I staggered back, the world tilting slightly. Impossible. Minutes. I'd been gone mere minutes. Where? Back towards the building, bursting through the doors, scanning the bright, empty space. The man I'd spoken to had vanished. "Hello?" My voice sounded thin, swallowed by the echoing quiet. "Anyone? Help?" Only silence replied. I bolted towards the women's restroom, shoving the door open, ignoring the pictogram. "Clara?" The name cracked. "You in here?" Each stall door stood ajar, revealing nothing but porcelain and tile, mocking sentinels of emptiness. Outside again, circling the car, desperate for any sign, any clue. Then I saw it. A tiny snag of yarn caught fast on the edge of the door handle. Recognition slammed into me. The soft blue wool of the sweater Clara had been wearing. A shot of ice pierced my chest. This wasn't a prank, not a misunderstanding. Something had found Clara in the dark. My phone felt alien in my trembling hand. Fingers fumbled, dialing the 3 digits that felt both inadequate and terrifyingly final. 911, what is your emergency? My girlfriend, I choked out, fighting for breath, for coherence. She's missing. Rest stop. Highway 40. Maybe 50 miles east of Flagstaff. I went inside. Just minutes. She's gone. The dispatcher's voice, a calm anchor in my swirling panic. Sir, please take a deep breath. Describe your girlfriend for me. I recited the details. 5'6", long chestnut hair, eyes the color of sea glass, jeans, the blue sweater. My own eyes frantically sweeping the desolate lot, praying for her shape to emerge from the shadows. Officers are en route, sir, she informed me. ETA is approximately 20 minutes. Please don't touch anything else on or near the vehicle. It might be evidence. Evidence. The word landed like a physical blow. Real. This was utterly, horrifyingly real. I paced the asphalt, a caged animal, my mind a frantic slideshow of unthinkable scenarios. Could she have left? No. Impossible. We were happy, our future sketched out in hopeful detail. Her purse, her phone, both still resting on the seat where she'd left them. Which meant the thought remained unfinished, too monstrous to articulate. Time stretched, taffy thin, each second an agony. Part of me screamed for this to be a stress-induced hallucination, a nightmare born of caffeine and exhaustion, but the distant Ryzen siren song shredded that fragile hope. 2 cruisers sliced through the pre-dawn gloom, their strobing lights painting the scene in frantic washes of red and blue. As uniformed figures approached, a crushing weight settled on my chest. Saying it again would make it irrevocably true. "You the caller? Missing person?" one officer asked. His expression professionally neutral, yet watchful. I managed a jerky nod, swallowing against the constriction in my throat. My girlfriend, Clara, in the car. I went in, came back, gone. He made notes in a small spiral-bound pad. "You're certain she didn't just step out?" "She'd have said," I insisted, desperation sharpening my voice. "Her stuff's still here. Something's wrong. I feel it." While they began their methodical work, questioning the handful of truckers stirring in their cabs, sweeping beams into the surrounding desert scrub, I could only stand, a useless, vibrating knot of fear. The man with the unsettling smile was nowhere. Hours dissolved into a haze of repeated questions, fractured phone calls, and a dread that grew heavier with each passing minute. As the first tentative streaks of dawn painted the eastern sky, the brutal reality cemented itself. Clara was gone, swallowed by the night, leaving behind only an empty seat and a shred of blue wool. This anonymous rest stop, merely a pause in our grand adventure, had become the epicenter of a waking nightmare. Every shadow seemed to lengthen menacingly. Every stranger's face held potential menace. Watching the sun climb higher, casting long skeletal shadows across the emptying lot, a chilling certainty settled over me. Our journey, the intended prologue to a shared life, had violently diverged. This was the start of a different passage altogether, one shrouded in fear, a quest I suspected might have no end. The harsh fluorescence yielded to the soft diffusion of morning, but the darkness of those few minutes promised to cast a long, indelible stain. My world, meticulously planned and eagerly anticipated, had fractured in an instant. The open road, symbol of freedom, now stretched ahead, an endless, agonizing question. Where was Clara? What transpired in that sliver of time? And the most terrifying query of all, would I ever find her? As the official investigation geared up, one truth resonated with absolute clarity. I would not stop. I would follow this path, however dark, until I unearthed the truth of that night. Our journey had taken a horrifying detour into the unknown, and I was now embarking on the only trip that mattered: the search for Clara. That pinpoint of crimson winking from the bedroom's shadowed eaves, that was the precise moment our idyllic escape curdled into something monstrous. A weekend conceived for solace, for rekindling embers between Leo and me, devolved into a suffocating ballet of fear. Two souls ensnared in a house whose gaze followed our every breath. Booking that quaint woodland sanctuary, I never dreamt we were stepping willingly into a nightmare's embrace. Leo and I, adrift in the beige currents of routine. Work's relentless tide, the blue glow of screens, the surrender to sleep, craved anchorage, a shore where the faded colors of our beginning might bloom anew. Thus, the listing discovered online felt like providence. A timbered haven nestled deep in whispering woods, barely a 2-hour ribbon of asphalt from the city's clamor. Photos whispered of hearthside warmth, a porcelain tub vast enough for entwined limbs, a veranda sighing over water still as glass. Agnes, the proprietor, boasted a constellation of 5-star accolades, hymns sung to her meticulous care. We booked instantly. The intervening days ticked off with fervent anticipation. Our journey unfolded through landscapes shifting from urban grey to verdant hush. The weeks accumulated static, dissolving with each mile. We reached the cottage as twilight painted the sky in bruised golds and purples. It stood, a pearl-white structure against the darkening trees, impossibly charming, plucked from some forgotten storybook. Agnes materialized at the threshold, petite, silver-haired, her smile a practiced curve, eyes radiating a warmth that felt curated. A swift tour ensued, highlighting comforts and nearby distractions. Before retreating, she offered a bottle of wine. "A small welcome," she murmured, a conspiratorial glint in her eye. "Do enjoy." The latch clicked shut, sealing us inside. Leo turned, a spark of mischief igniting his expression. "Last one to the bedroom," he challenged, already shedding his shoes. Laughter bubbled up inside me, a lightness unfamiliar for months as I gave chase. The bedroom echoed the cottage's charm. A vast cloud-like bed, windows framing the lake like living canvases. Leo collapsed onto the duvet with a contented groan. "This is perfect," he breathed, drawing me down beside him. That inaugural evening unspooled in quiet wonder. We explored the cottage's nooks, wandered the grounds, intoxicated by the profound silence, a stark contrast to our apartment's perpetual urban thrum. Dinner was a shared creation in the surprisingly well-appointed kitchen, followed by Agnes's wine on the veranda as constellations pricked the velvet sky. Only later, preparing for sleep, did I spy it. The minute, insistent pulse of red high in the corner, where wall met ceiling. A smoke detector? No, too diminutive. Wrongly placed. "Leo," my voice was tentative. "Look up there. Do you see that?" He traced my pointing finger, his brow knitting. "Is that a lens?" The chilling certainty struck us simultaneously. Observed, watched. For how long? Had our earlier closeness been catalogued? Bile rose in my throat. A frantic, heart-pounding search commenced, unearthing 3 more clandestine eyes. One surveying the living area, another perched above the kitchen counter, and a violation that stole my breath. One in the bathroom, its cold gaze fixed upon the shower stall. "We need to leave," Leo whispered, his voice tight with dread. I nodded, already reaching for our hastily packed bags. But my hand froze on the doorknob, snagged by a horrifying possibility. "Leo," I breathed, the words barely audible. What if they're watching now? What if they know we know? The unspoken threat hung between us, thick and suffocating. If our discovery was monitored in real time, our awareness was no secret. And the sort of mind that plants hidden cameras. What else might it be capable of to protect its perversion? We were stranded, miles from familiarity, ignorant of who watched. Or from how near? Logic screamed for flight. Pile into the car, drive without pause until the city's familiar lights offered sanctuary. Yet, a stubborn knot of fury and violation held me fast. "We need proof," I declared, the words tasting like grit. "If we just run, they'll inflict this on others." Leo's uncertainty warred with agreement, but he nodded. "All right, but fast, Eliza. This place, it feels wrong." With trembling hands, we documented the camera's locations, capturing images on our phones. I managed to dislodge one of the smaller devices, its tiny form feeling obscene in my palm as I slipped it into my pocket. Tangible evidence. We were huddled in the kitchen, whispering strategies, when the sound ripped through the quiet. Tires crunching on the gravel outside. Leo's eyes widened, reflecting raw panic. "Is that?" A glance through the window confirmed my dread. Agnes's car was gliding up the driveway. "Quick!" I hissed, shoving him towards the living room. "Act normal. Don't let her suspect." We scrambled into a tableau of nonchalance. Leo snatching up a book, me feigning interest in the refrigerator's contents. Still, the knock at the door jolted us like an electric shock. I pulled the door open, stretching my lips into a smile that felt brittle. "Agnes? Hello. Everything all right?" She stood there, bathed in the porch light, wearing that same placid smile, now imbued with an unnerving quality. "Oh, perfectly fine," she chirped. "Just remembered a couple of small things about the cottage I forgot to mention." "May I?" Every nerve ending shrieked, "No," but refusal felt like confession. I stepped back, granting her entry. Agnes's gaze swept the room. A subtle inventory. I saw her eyes linger, just for a fraction of a second, on the empty space in the corner where the kitchen camera had been. A flicker, annoyance, calculation crossed her features before vanishing. So, she pivoted back to us, smile firmly repinned. "You're finding everything to your liking?" Leo, to his credit, produced a plausible nod. "Yes, absolutely. It's wonderfully peaceful." Agnes beamed, a chillingly bright expression. "I'm so pleased. One does worry, about guests feeling secure, being so remote. It's why I invested in the security system. For peace of mind. Yours and mine." The lie was breathtakingly audacious. For a moment, words failed me. Leo stepped into the breach, his voice only marginally strained. "Security system? We hadn't noticed one." "Ah, but that's rather the point, isn't it?" Agnes replied with a soft, unsettling chuckle. "Not much good if it calls attention to itself. But rest assured, you're quite safe here. I make absolutely certain of it." The veiled message landed like a physical blow. "I know you know. And I know that you know I know." A dizzying, dangerous exchange played out beneath the surface pleasantries. "Well," I managed, forcing steadiness into my tone, "we certainly appreciate you looking out for us. But we were just heading to bed, actually. It's getting late. Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Of course, she conceded smoothly. Wouldn't want to keep you. Sleep soundly. The instant the door clicked shut behind her, Leo and I locked eyes, mirroring the same potent fear. Out, he whispered urgently. Now. I nodded, grabbing our bags, already repacked. We slipped through the back entrance, unwilling to risk Agnes spotting our departure from the front. The woods pressed close, dark and alien, yet infinitely preferable to another moment within those washed walls. We reached the car undetected, relief washing over me until I turned the ignition key. The headlights flared, illuminating a figure standing starkly at the edge of the trees. Agnes, she lifted a hand in a slow, deliberate wave, that ghastly smile fixed unerringly upon us. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. Gravel spat as the car fishtailed onto the track. In the rearview mirror, Agnes dwindled but remained motionless, a silent effigy watching us flee, as if privy to some grim, inevitable future. We drove through the night, a frantic, unbroken flight back to the city's concrete embrace. The following day found us at a police station, presenting the dislodged camera, the photos on our phones. They recorded our statement, but their skepticism was palpable. Our word against hers, without catching her red-handed. Weeks bled into months. I found myself compulsively checking the online listing. It remained active, accumulating fresh 5-star reviews. How many others, I wondered, had succumbed to Agnes's curated charm? Their private moments harvested for unknown, unthinkable purposes. Leo and I endured. The ordeal, harrowing as it was, forged a new tensile strength between us. We became vocal about privacy, advocating for tighter controls on such rentals. But to claim we were unchanged would be a falsehood. Caution is now etched into our interactions with the world, an awareness of the potential for darkness lurking beneath benign surfaces. And sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, my eyes still instinctively scan the corners of our own bedroom, searching for the phantom gleam of a tiny, winking red light. Upon my bedroom nightstand rests the Bakelite relic, an artifact of ossified cream plastic bequeathed by Arthur, my grandfather, whose passing last month left me custodian of such orphaned mementos. Its rotary dial, a miniature metal wheel of fortune, still offers that deeply satisfying whir-click-click when spun, a tactile ghost of vanished conversations. I'd salvaged it purely for sentiment's echo. Its coiled cord terminated in frayed, impotent wires, utterly disconnected from any wall socket. Which is precisely why the sound shattered the pre-dawn silence at 3:17 a.m. last Tuesday. A strident mechanical jangle, harsh and insistent, clawed its way out of the darkness, jolting me upright. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I stared, incredulous, at the inert object. Yet the ringing persisted. 2 sharp bursts, a breath of silence, then again. The precise cadence I recalled from childhood summers spent under Arthur's roof. Impossible, I breathed, fumbling for the lamp. Warm light spilled across the room, illuminating the impossible. The phone continued its shrill summons. My hand, slick with sudden sweat, closed around the receiver. "Hello?" A hiss of static answered, a sound like rushing sand, and beneath it, something else. A faint, laborious wheezing, then, unmistakably, laughter. Not the warm sound of mirth, but a fragile, papery chuckle, thin and dry as autumn leaves, that prickled the hairs along my arm. It lasted perhaps 5 seconds before the line clicked dead, leaving only the dial tone of profound silence in my ear. Trembling, I replaced the handset in its cradle. My fingers traced the cord behind the nightstand, pulling forth the severed end, confirming the frayed disconnect I already knew existed. Sleep thereafter was a skittish creature. Reason scrabbled for purchase. A residual charge in some ancient capacitor? A vivid hallucination born of grief by morning's light, I'd nearly woven a tapestry of denial. Until the following night, this time, the ringing erupted at 3:21 a.m. I lay frozen, watching the bakelite body quiver with each metallic shriek. Several rings passed before dread propelled my hand forward. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice tight. The static roared louder now, a blizzard of noise, and woven within it, the laughter returned, stronger, multiplied. Not one chuckle, but several, overlapping, echoing, a chorus of desiccated amusement that churned my stomach. It stretched longer, 15 seconds maybe, before abruptly ceasing. I slammed the receiver down, my hand shaking so violently I had to clutch the nightstand's edge for ballast. Cold sweat plastered my t-shirt to my skin. The next day became a descent into the arcane trivia of antique telephony. Could it intercept stray radio waves? Phantom signals bleeding from adjacent lines. No explanation surfaced that didn't crumble under the weight of its own implausibility. That evening, fueled by a desperate sort of defiance, I performed an autopsy on the device. Its innards were layered with dust but structurally sound. No hidden battery, no clandestine power source, no conceivable mechanism by which it could summon a ring. I left its dismembered corpse scattered across my desk. "Ring now, damn you," I muttered to the pieces. At 3:24 a.m., the bell screamed. Jerked awake, I stared at the dismantled phone, a collection of plastic and metal shards. Yet the ringing pierced the air, clear and undiminished. The handset lay among the debris, its cord snipped clean. My voice quaked as I lifted it. "What do you want?" Static exploded, a physical force against my ear, carrying the laughter. Now a legion. More voices had joined, pressing closer, their spectral mouths seemingly inches from my ear, the sound filling my skull, crowding out thought. My blood ran cold as one particular sound detached itself from the cacophony. A wet, glottal gurgle. A sound impossibly organic, yet utterly inhuman. With a strangled cry, I hurled the handset across the room. It impacted the wall with a sickening crack, scarring the plaster. The laughter sliced off instantly. My hands refused to still as I swept the phone's remnants into a garbage bag. I drove to the dumpster behind my apartment complex, consigning the cursed plastic and wire to its rank depths. Then I sat in my car, watching the eastern sky pale towards dawn, too afraid to return to my rooms. The following night found me in a sterile hotel room. A sleeping pill blurred the edges of consciousness as I drifted off to the television's drone. The bedside phone woke me at 3:27 a.m. Even before lifting the sleek modern receiver, I knew, first, The familiar roar of static, then the laughter, now thunderous. Dozens of voices joined in a howling, cackling jubilee. They sounded triumphant. One voice cried out something indistinct, words lost in the gale, and the others responded with fresh detonations of glee that made my ears ache. I slammed the phone down and fled the room. The night manager regarded my frantic arrival in the lobby with alarm. "Sir, everything all right?" "My room. The phone. Who's calling it?" He consulted his monitor, brow furrowed. "Sir, there are no external lines active to the rooms right now. We're in the middle of a system upgrade. The phones, they're essentially just props at the moment." I drove home through the nascent sunrise in a stupor, sleep a distant memory. My keys trembled against the lock. Pushing the apartment door open, my gaze fell upon the bedroom doorway. And then, the nightstand. It sat there, the old rotary phone, fully assembled, gleaming faintly, as if freshly polished, looking precisely as it had when I first brought it from Arthur's house. I backed slowly out of the bedroom, pulled the door shut, and after a moment's frantic thought, jammed a chair beneath the handle. Then I collapsed onto the living room couch and phoned work, claiming illness. That afternoon, compulsion drove me back to Arthur's old house. Sold now, but the new owners, a pleasant couple named Davies, were tending the garden. Recognizing me from the sale process, they invited me inside. "Funny you should stop by," Mr. Davies said, wiping soil from his hands. "We had a question about the phone lines. The inspector flagged some unusual wiring." He led me to Arthur's former study. The familiar wood paneling now painted a jarringly cheerful yellow. He indicated a spot behind where the old desk had stood. "See these markings around the jack? They don't conform to any standard schematic." I knelt, peering closer. Etched into the wood, surrounding the phone outlet like a cryptic halo, were dozens of tiny, intricate symbols. Interlocking circles, jagged lines, patterns utterly alien to me. "Your grandfather wasn't into anything unusual, was he?" Mrs. Davies asked, her tone hesitant. "We found similar carvings in a couple of other rooms, always near the phone jacks." I shook my head, bewildered. "Not that I ever knew. He was a telephone engineer. Worked for the company his entire career." "Huh." Mr. Davies scratched his head. "Odd. Well, we're planning a full rewire anyway. Thanks for clarifying." Leaving their house, I sat in my car for a long time, Arthur's image forming in my mind. Never overtly superstitious, yet I recalled his insistence on maintaining landlines in every room, long after mobile phones became ubiquitous. His obsessive checking of connections, replacing cords, testing the dial tones, and those quiet evenings, finding him in his study, not speaking, just holding the receiver to his ear, listening for what? That night, sleep was not even attempted. I sat vigil in the living room, every light blazing, my eyes fixed on the barricaded bedroom door. At precisely 3:30 a.m., the ringing began. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound bored through, insistent, undeterred. After 12 agonizing rings, it ceased. Then, the laughter started, insidious, seeping from beneath the door, loud enough now that no receiver was needed. It possessed a frantic, almost desperate quality, escalating, building towards some unseen crescendo. The chair wedged under the knob began to jitter as a low vibration hummed through the floorboards. A new sound joined the unholy chorus. A rapid series of clicks and pops, the distinct sound of a rotary dial being spun with impossible speed. The laughter reached a fever pitch. Static electricity prickled my skin, thick and charged, making the air feel heavy. The lights flickered violently, then died, plunging the room into absolute darkness. Through the black, I heard the bedroom door swing inward, the chair scraping uselessly aside. The static became overwhelming, a physical pressure crushing my eardrums. The laughter enveloped me, swirling from every corner, a vortex of mirthless sound. And through the din, words finally coalesced, chanted by dozens of voices. Wrong number, wrong number, wrong number. They howled with the manic glee. My vision swam, the pressure intensifying beyond endurance. My last conscious sight, before darkness claimed me utterly, was the old rotary phone, floating in the center of my living room, its severed cord writhing like a black serpent, the dial spinning, spinning, spinning. I woke in a hospital bed. Extreme exhaustion, the doctors concluded, after my neighbors found me unconscious in the hallway. 2 days later, I returned home. The phone was gone. In its place on the nightstand lay a single sheet of paper covered in Arthur's familiar, shaky script. They keep trying to call through. I held them back as long as I could. Your grandmother and I both did. I'm sorry. I should have destroyed the phones before I passed. They'll find someone else to dial now. Just remember, never answer a call after midnight. Never give them a connection. They only need one voice to answer. One voice to open the line. I moved out of that apartment. I changed my number. I own no landline. Sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, a phantom ringing echoes in my ears. Or I catch the spectral tale of that terrible laughter on the edge of hearing. But as long as I don't answer, as long as the circuit remains incomplete, I believe I'm safe. My concern now lies with all those other phones, those forgotten relics gathering dust in attics and basements, all those potential listeners who might, in a moment of sleepy confusion, lift the receiver when that first ring cuts through the silence. Heed this. If an unplugged phone begins to cry out after the witching hour, do not answer it. Do not lend them your voice. They are dialing randomly, desperately, eternally. And they only need one person, just one, to pick up. Let it ring. The key grated, a rusty protest against the tumblers, before the conservatory's side entrance yielded last night. Clutched in one hand was my battered satchel of scores. In the other, a slender torch casting a nervous beam. Public access had long ceased, but the proprietor, sensing my desperation for solitude, a sanctuary from prying ears, had entrusted me with this access, leasing me the forgotten recital chamber. An immediate embrace of stagnant air, thick with the perfume of mildewed timber, greeted my entry. With the corridor lights extinguished, my torch carved a path through the oppressive dark. Each footfall a lonely percussion against the unforgiving stone, amplifying the profound silence. Locating the grand hallway, I found the designated practice room, its door groaning open on ancient hinges, revealing a space seemingly untouched by human presence for an age. Elias Vance, pianist, that's my vocation, though my coffers echo emptier than this hall. A pristine studio remains a distant dream. This neglected chamber, however, offered affordability and the expansive isolation required for true concentration. Within, a vast stage dominated, flanked by a precarious stack of chairs in one corner. Dust lay like a shroud over every surface, filming the tall windows with a grimy opacity. Centered on the stage, a grand piano waited. Depositing my satchel, I produced a cloth, swiping clean the piano bench. Its upholstery frayed at the corners, the wood beneath scarred and chipped. Imperfections irrelevant to my purpose. I simply yearned to play. Lifting the heavy felt cover exposed the keys. The instrument was venerable, certainly, yet appeared fundamentally sound. Tentative pressures yielded notes of uneven timbre, yet passably resonant. I began with a simple C major scale, my fingers clumsy, stiffened by the hall's penetrating chill. My own breath plumed visibly in the torchlight. I zipped my jacket higher. Heating, if it existed, slumbered. More scales followed, a ritual to coax warmth into my hands. Initially, the familiar routine held sway. My focus remained tethered to technique. The curve of my wrists, the crisp articulation needed for velocity without sacrificing clarity. Then abruptly, a breath of impossible cold feathered the nape of my neck. It mimicked an icy draft, yet the door was firmly shut, the windows sealed by grime and time. I paused, sweeping the torch beam around the room. Dust motes hung suspended, undisturbed. A shrug, a dismissal, and I returned to the keys. Minutes later, I embarked on a nocturne, demanding finesse in the upper registers. As my fingers danced over a particular sequence, the ambient temperature plunged anew. This wasn't gradual. It was akin to stepping bodily into a meat locker. A tremor ran through my arms, my fingertips stinging despite the jacket. Again, I scanned the empty space behind me. Vacant. I forced the thought away. A faulty vent, perhaps. A fissure in the ancient doorframe. Yet, repeating the passage, the same delicate notes summoned not only the cold, but also a whisper of sound. Friction on floorboards, impossibly close. A quick dry scuff. My playing ceased. I pivoted sharply. The torch beam illuminated the stacked chairs, motionless. Nothing stirred. A forceful exhale escaped me, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, before I turned back to the instrument. I resumed playing, though concentration proved elusive, the unsettling sensation lingering like a discordant harmony. During the next repetition, a specific note, perfectly tuned moments before, suddenly soured, a brief, jarring distortion. I lifted my finger, but the aberrant tone lingered an extra spectral second. Pressing the key again yielded a normal sound. I checked the pedal, ensuring no sympathetic resonance was my own doing. All seemed correct. I attempted the passage once more. This time, a distinct pressure beside me on the bench. The phantom weight of an unseen listener settling near. I froze. My left hand reached out, patting the worn velvet beside me. Nothing but emptiness. The sensation vanished as quickly as it had arrived, leaving my pulse galloping. A pause was necessary. Descending the stage, I retrieved my water bottle. My hand trembled as I drank, the dryness in my throat palpable. To settle my nerves, I paced the periphery of the hall, my torchlight glancing off faded photographs, brittle announcements for recitals decades gone. One framed certificate commemorated a long-departed instructor. The glass fractured across dates, yellowed with time. After several minutes adrift in these echoes of the past, the piano beckoned. Practice was paramount. Steeling myself, I resolved to ignore the unnerving atmosphere. I launched into a complex piece destined for an upcoming recital, its shifting dynamics and intricate pedal work demanding my full attention. I focused on precision, regulated my breathing, kept my gaze fixed on the ivory keys. Then, amidst a pianissimo phrase, something cold, impossibly distinct, brushed my neck. Not air, not draft, but the glacial graze of something akin to fingertips against my skin. My body locked rigid. My foot slipped from the damper pedal, shattering the sustained chord into dissonant chaos. My head snapped around. Emptiness. A wave of chills cascaded down my arms. I surged to my feet, scrutinizing the hall again. I descended the stage steps, sweeping the torch beam across the rows of vacant seats. The heavy, dust-laden curtains. The distant exit doors. Nothing but shadow and silence. A hollow laugh tried to escape me. Imagination, surely. Yet the pockets of intense cold near the piano were undeniable. Returning to the stage, heart still hammering, I felt an illogical compulsion to continue. Perhaps, I reasoned, my nerves were merely amplifying the building's natural quirks. I chose a more formidable piece, something loud, powerful, hoping its tempestuous energy might banish my anxieties. But midway through the composition, the piano's tuning wavered again. Pitches seemed to bend, subtly but unmistakably, rendering the melody clumsy, almost drunken. I slowed, testing each note deliberately. Normalcy returned. Rubbing my temples, I sighed. The instrument clearly needed professional attention. Just then, a faint susurrus brushed my ear. Indecipherable, a mere exhalation of sound, yet chillingly close. My skin crawled. I leapt up, backing away from the bench, pacing the stage again, torch probing the corners, the recesses behind the proscenium. Nothing. Extinguishing the light momentarily, I strained my eyes against the near absolute blackness, broken only by the faint green glow of an emergency exit sign. Still nothing. Breathing grew rapid, constricted. A dull ache began behind my eyes. A moment's frantic searching yielded my phone from my pocket. Predictably, no signal penetrated these thick walls. The battery showed half charge. Flight seemed sensible, yet the imperative to practice warred with a burgeoning, unnerving curiosity. Something in this place resonated, a silent call I felt compelled to answer. Back at the piano, I sat commencing a slow, placid adagio. For the first minute, tranquility reigned. I began to relax, focusing on posture, on expressive nuance. Then the temperature plummeted once more. My breath fogged. My eyes stung with the sudden frigidity. My hands stiffened, but I persisted, determined. That's when I heard it. A low groan, seemingly emanating from beneath the stage itself. I stopped instantly, pressing my ear against the piano's wooden flank. Silence. I rose, moved to the stage lip, and knelt, peering into the narrow gap beneath the floorboards. Darkness, impenetrable. Tapping the wood produced a solid sound, yet a strange cold draft wafted upwards, making my eyes water. Turning back, I saw it, A single high ivory key, depressed, held down silently as if by a gentle, invisible finger. No sound emerged. Perhaps it was merely stuck. Approaching cautiously, I touched it lightly. It sprang back into place. My legs felt unsteady. I sank onto the bench, gathering my resolve, fingers hovering. I decided to play that specific note. The instant I pressed it, a wave of profound cold enveloped me. My teeth began to chatter. An immense pressure settled on my shoulders. I forced myself to continue, weaving a hesitant melody, testing notes, searching for a reaction. Deeper into the melody I ventured, and strangely, the anxiety began to recede, replaced by a feeling of being guided by the music itself. Then the anomaly occurred. My hands moved, but not under my volition. I knew the piece I intended, but the notes cascading forth were alien. I tried to halt, but my fingers continued their relentless dance. Panic surged. I attempted to lift my hands, but they felt adhered to the keys, an external force pressing them down. Sweat beaded on my palms. The emergent chords were dissonant, unsettling, yet flowed with a bizarre internal logic. My wrists ached under the strain. Gritting my teeth, I wrenched my hands away with a surge of effort. The music fractured into silence. My arms throbbed. I leaped up, gasping for air. The oppressive cold seemed to lessen slightly. Touching my wrists, I found the muscles knotted, fingers trembling uncontrollably. I paced the stage again, fighting for breath. The urge to flee was potent, yet my satchel remained, and that strange magnetism held me fast. Perhaps proof was possible. Retrieving my phone, I activated the video camera, propping it carefully on the music stand, angled towards the keyboard. I would record myself. Maybe the lens could capture what my senses struggled to interpret. I began a simple, repetitive sequence, a musical anchor allowing me to observe my surroundings. Over and over, the pattern cycled. The phone screen glowed, reflecting my tense form. After a minute, the familiar chill returned, my breath misting before me. Eyes glued to the screen, I saw it. A fleeting, amorphous shadow flickering behind my shoulder. There, then gone. My heart hammered, but I played on. Suddenly a note warped audibly. I watched my hands on the screen. Correct fingering, yet the sound produced was distorted, flat. Adrenaline spiked. I pressed harder, and an entire chord seemed to curdle, loosen pitch before snapping back. At that exact moment, the phone screen froze, flickered violently, and went black. I snatched it up, jabbing the power button, lifeless. The battery, half full moments ago, was utterly drained. A curse died on my lips. Setting the dead device aside, I felt a tingling numbness creep up my arms, a dizzying lightness in my head. Another swig from my water bottle brought only a deeper chill to my core, a sense of teetering on the precipice of something vast and uncontrollable. I resolved to pinpoint the cold's origin. Circumnavigating the stage with deliberate steps, I ran my hand along the heavy velvet curtains. They felt damp, exuding a musty odor. At the rear of the hall stood a small storage closet. Its metal knob, pitted with rust, resisted my grasp before yielding with a tortured screech. The air within hung heavy, smelling sharply of sodden cardboard and decay. My torch revealed stacked, dilapidated music stands, skeletal chairs, and a fractured mirror, leaning precariously. The atmosphere was thick, stagnant, but oddly, not as intensely cold as the area near the piano. Finding nothing but derelict clutter, I secured the door and retraced my steps to the waiting instrument. An inexplicable pull urged me back to the bench, a counterpoint to the fear knotting my stomach, the frantic rhythm of my pulse. I sat, placing my hands above the keys, testing a few notes, bracing for the familiar phenomena. Silence, initially. Then, a blast of frigid air struck my back, locking my shoulders tight. The ebony keys felt like shards of ice beneath my fingertips. A near inaudible whisper curled around my left ear. My breathing hitched. I pressed a chord, and the sound seemed to vibrate unnaturally. The piano's massive lid rattled for a split second, shifting almost imperceptibly, as if nudged. I continued, building a simple melody, my own heartbeat a deafening timpani in my ears. As I played, the chords began to morph again, wrested from my control. My muscles seized. The melody contorted into that unfamiliar, haunting pattern. Closing my eyes briefly, I felt a strange swaying sensation, almost trance-like. My thoughts grew foggy, yet the playing continued, automatic, relentless. My breathing became shallow, my skin numb. I was no longer the player, merely the vessel, yet escape felt impossible. My arms trembled as they swept across the keyboard, the music swelling in volume, unbidden, acquiring a depth, a resonance that suggested phantom hands playing alongside my own. Then, quiet, yet utterly distinct, my own name, Elias, spoken into the void. My heart leaped violently. I stopped playing, spinning around so abruptly I nearly tumbled from the bench. Nothing, sweat trickled down my temples. I fought to regain my breath. The hall was utterly still, save for the frantic thudding within my chest. Rising, I snatched my phone, stuffing it into my pocket. I gathered my cloth, zipped the satchel closed. Enough. Descending the stage, I locked the groaning door behind me, traversing the Stygian hallway with backward glances, anticipating pursuit. Nothing stirred. The silence pressed down, heavy and watchful. My mind churned with unanswerable questions, but remaining another moment was unthinkable. Reaching the outer door, I fumbled with the key, finally twisting it free, stepping out into the sharp embrace of the night street. The cold, clean air was a balm. My breath shuddered on the exhale. Yet I intend to return. The rationale escapes me, but the need is undeniable. Something within that decaying grandeur called out through the discordant notes, a presence seeking expression. I feel compelled to go back, to see if communication is possible, to discover what truly lurks within the venerable walls of the conservatory. I must understand. Tomorrow night, I will face it again. I will attempt to document, to decipher, to learn if a spirit truly seeks solace or voice through the music. My hands tremble at the thought, but the pull remains. A dissonant chord struck deep within me. I cannot turn away now. I have to know. Forget preamble. Listen. This isn't about the miles logged or the solace found on two wheels under an empty sky, though that's the life I chose. The engines thrum beneath me, a solitary heartbeat in the dark. That's usually enough, but the road coughed up something alien that night, something inexplicable, and I just need to lay the bone truth of it bare. 3 bells tolled somewhere in the void, marking an hour only insomniacs and the lost truly know. Hours I'd ridden down this forgotten vein of tarmac, a ribbon unwinding through nowhere. Never seen it busy, not even by day. The cold began to seep in then, not just wind chill, but a deeper bite, finding the gaps in my leathers, settling in the marrow. Absolute stillness descended, a held breath across the landscape. My headlamp slashed futilely at the ink, the only rupture in miles of black. No house glow, no flicker of a distant gas station for an age. Then ahead, a blind wall. Fog, dense and sudden as a cataract across the world. Instinctively, I eased back the throttle. Plunging into the grey felt like entering another state of being. Phantom fingers of moisture clung to my jacket, cold and immediate. My visor beaded, not with rain, but the fog's own clammy sweat. High beams were useless, throwing glare back like an accusation, so I switched to low, the beam barely pricking the gloom. Beneath my tires, the asphalt turned slick as oilskin. My gut clenched. Not simple nerves, but a primal tightening, a deep-seated wrongness. This wasn't weather. It was a presence. Thick and watchful. Clotted. The light from my machine was strangled just feet from the lens. My world shrank to monochrome suffocation. Then, the engine hiccuped. A death rattle in its throat. The handlebars trembled violently in my grip. Not water in the wires. I knew my machine, loyal beast that it was. This felt more insidious. It sputtered again, faltered. I glanced down. Gauges winked out, one by one. The engine sighed into silence. The console went black. And fear, cold and sharp, drove a spike through my heart. I thumbed the starter, a useless click, a thin mechanical whimper against the sudden, oppressive quiet. My pulse became a frantic drum against my skull. Kickstand down. My boots met weeping asphalt, and a chill snaked up my spine unrelated to the temperature. My mind scrambled for purchase, for logic. Wait for morning, for the fog to lift. But the fog itself felt sentient, pressing in, heavy. I decided to heave the iron horse to the shoulder. The weight of it felt immense, dragging against the palpable density of the mist. Visibility was arm's length, no more. My own breath sounded unnaturally loud, a ragged plume ghosting in the thicker miasma before being swallowed. I parked it, turned the ignition off, then on again. A futile prayer. The console flickered, a dying nerve, but the engine remained obstinately dead. That's when I heard it, a soft wet scuff behind me, like a ruined foot being dragged across the pavement. I spun, squinting into the grey oblivion. Nothing. My heart hammered my ribs. "Hey!" My voice sounded thin, instantly swallowed. "Who's there?" Only the echo answered, mocking. Then a faint murmur, like static on a dead channel, utterly indecipherable. My skin crawled. Cold sweat bloomed beneath my leathers despite the chill air. An animal? A stray dog? No. The cadence was too deliberate, too rhythmically broken, unnervingly human. My hand fumbled for the flashlight in my pocket, clicked it on. The beam was a frail finger probing the dense cotton of the fog, useless beyond a few feet. I heard the dragon step again, a dry rustle now, seeming to circle me, and whispers, sibilant and furtive, always just beyond comprehension. "Is anyone out there?" I shouted, voice hoarse now. No reply, just another shuffle, and a low whisper that seemed to curl around from behind me, a cold breath on my neck. I turned again, Empty gray, my chest banded tight, lungs starved for air. Each breath became short, sharp. My mind raced like a frantic engine. Walk? Leave the bike? It felt like suicide. The last town was an eternity back down that black road. My watch face glowed accusingly. 3:15. Dawn felt like a distant myth. I made my choice. Pushed the dead weight of my machine. Walk it forward towards some imagined sanctuary, some break in this suffocating embrace. I gripped the handlebars. The asphalt felt buckled and uneven beneath my boots. Keeping balance was a conscious effort. As I walked, the fog seemed to thicken, becoming tactile, pressing. My flashlight beam recoiled, reflecting back, almost blinding. And the footsteps returned, multiplied now, phantom companions walking with me in the gray. The muttering coalesced into a low chorus of the unseen. The words elided, meaningless, a chilling sound nonetheless. My nerves felt like screaming wires stretched taut. Each step forward was an act of will against the oppressive weight. After what felt like an age of pushing, the bike's headlights spasmed. A brief, ghostly illumination that flared and died. Hope flickered and was instantly extinguished. The engine remained inert. A frustrated sigh escaped me, lost in the damp air. Then, off to the side, I perceived a subtle rift in the fog, a small locus of lesser density. I decided to wheel the bike over there, hoping for a clearer view, a moment's respite. My arms screamed protest, shoulders burning. My boots skidded on the slick surface. My hands felt like numb claws clamped onto the bars. I reached the spot, a small patch of gravel, parked the bike again. Tried to gather my scattered thoughts. The fog wreathed the clearing, maintaining a watchful perimeter. But here, I could see marginally better. That's when movement snagged the edge of my sight. To the left, a vague man-sized ambiguity, standing utterly still. I stabbed the flashlight beam towards it. Empty space, just the swirling gray. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, turned the flashlight off, then on again. Nothing. My throat felt parched. I swallowed dust, and then labored breathing, heavy and wet, directly behind me. I whipped around, light cutting the air. The clearing was empty. I paced a small, frantic circle, trying to keep my eyes on every angle. The breathing grew louder for a beat, then abruptly silenced, as if a switch had been thrown. My heart felt like a trapped bird battering against my ribs. My ears filled with white noise. The muscles in my neck were cords of tension. The feeling of an unseen gaze was palpable, crushing. I had to move. I forced myself back to the handlebars, began pushing again. The fog became a living thing, swirling, deliberately obscuring the path. Wiping my visor was futile. The moisture returned instantly. The humidity felt crushing, yet the temperature seemed to plummet further. Each breath was a harsh rasp in my throat. My legs felt leaden, and I started catching glimpses. Things on the periphery, just beyond the weak cone of light. Once, I swear I saw a face, pale, distorted. The skin stretched impossibly taut over unseen bones. It was there for a fraction of a second, then swallowed by the mist. My chest felt like it might implode. A shaky breath escaped me. My hands trembled uncontrollably. Exhaustion, my mind whispered. Tricks of the light. But my gut screamed, real. A wet, dragging scrape started up on my right. Lasted a few seconds, then stopped. I snapped my head that way. The flashlight sliced empty air. Then the sound came again, this time on my left, closer. A prickle exploded up my spine, raising to my scalp. My stomach twisted into a knot. Ignore it? Impossible. It played with me. A horrifying game of auditory hide and seek, advancing, retreating, switching sides. I gripped the handlebars so hard my knuckles shone white like bone through the skin. I managed to cover more ground, though time had lost all meaning in that timeless void. My watch was a cruel joke, minutes crawling like wounded slugs. I found another small patch where the grey seemed less choked, less absolute. Here, the road was split by a jagged fissure, dark water pooled within. My flashlight beam caught the surface, and in the reflection, clear as day, stood a figure beside me. I spun, light blazing, heart seizing, nothing, only the fog. I checked the puddle again. The reflection was empty. My chest felt like it was about to rupture from the strain. The noises worsened. The whispers swelled, no longer faint murmurs, but a sibilant, hushed argument nearby. Then it would shift, devolving into a low, keening moan that vibrated in the damp air. Step by painstaking step, I kept moving. My boots squeaked on the wet tarmac. My jacket felt like a sodden shroud. My breath kept fogging my visor, so I lifted it, letting the cold, wet air slap my face. Glancing down the road, I saw it. A fleeting rictus, a twisted face materializing from the mist. Its eyes were just dark voids. Its mouth hung open in a silent scream. I aimed the flashlight, and it vanished, dissolved back into the grey. My heart became a frantic piston against my ribs. My whole body shuddered. I started cursing under my breath, my voice a frail reed in the vast, indifferent greyness. At that point, the urge to abandon the bike, to just run blindly into the fog, was overwhelming. But where? There was nowhere to go. My phone, checked earlier, remained a dead brick. No signal, no hope there. Turn back? The thought alone triggered a wave of pure dread. The fog behind me seemed thicker, somehow more impenetrable than what lay ahead. I felt an odd pressure at my back, as if the air itself forbade retreat. Forward, only forward, pushed through this nightmare. My boots splashed through shallow puddles. My jeans were soaked around the ankles. My jacket dripped. My arms were numb agony. My lower back screamed with every step. Up ahead, on the right, I noticed something. A faint, sickly yellow luminescence, not like my flashlight's beam. I moved closer, step by cautious step, straining my eyes. As I approached, the light flickered, then winked out. A trick of the fog? Then, from that exact spot, a loud, clumsy shuffle. I froze, aimed the light, saw nothing but the swirling haze. My heart leapt into my throat. My palms felt slick. My breath came in quick, shallow gasps. I spoke out loud, my voice cracking. I don't want trouble, okay? I didn't know if I addressed a person or something else. I received no response. Just the distant, insidious chorus of murmurs. A few more agonizing steps. I caught a hint of movement in my peripheral vision again, something tall. Maybe a tree trunk near the road's edge. I moved the flashlight to check. There were no trees. The shapes I saw were just swirling, unstable forms in the mist. One coalesced briefly, a head utterly featureless, then dissolved back into the chaotic mass. My eyes burned from the strain of trying to focus. A wave of nausea churned in my stomach. My legs started to shake uncontrollably. My chest felt hollow, my throat constricted. Escape became the only imperative, a primal need. I gave the ignition another desperate shot, turned the key. The console lights ghosted on for a second, then died completely. In frustration, I kicked the foot pedal hard. The metallic clang echoed unnaturally loud in the stillness. For a beat, the whispers paused, as if listening. Then they resumed, seeming more urgent, closer. I tried to focus on something practical. Checked my watch. 4 a.m. I'd been trapped in this grey hell for about an hour, though it felt like a lifetime. Could I wait until dawn? Not like this. I had to push forward again, praying the fog might eventually break. My arms felt like dead weights. My lower back was on fire, but I forced myself to continue. The footsteps returned. They seemed to match my pace at times, always just outside my range of vision, a maddeningly elusive presence. My flashlight beam began to dim noticeably. The batteries were dying. I tapped it, hoping to coax more life from it. It flickered weakly. My heart sank. If I lost that fragile light, I'd be utterly blind. Suddenly I stumbled, my boot catching in a large pothole. I almost dropped the bike, twisting my ankle sharply as I fought to keep it upright. Pain lanced up my leg, white hot. I cursed under my breath, forced to pause. I rested the bike on its stand and leaned heavily against it, trying to catch my breath. My ankle throbbed viciously. My entire body was a taut wire of tension and exhaustion. The fog pressed in like a wet, suffocating blanket on every inch of exposed skin. I felt utterly isolated, adrift in a hostile void. A few seconds later, a low groan emanated from the mist to my left. I saw something move in the corner of my vision. I snapped my head in that direction, but the fog blocked everything. My own ragged breathing filled my ears. The hair on my arms stood bolt upright. My scalp tingled. I thought I saw a shape detaching itself from the grey, coming closer. I aimed the failing flashlight again, yelling, my voice raw. "Stay away! Stay back!" I heard a faint hiss in response, like escaping steam, a sound that made my jaw clench tight. Then I saw the shape withdraw, melt back into the swirling obscurity. I realized then, with chilling certainty, that I might not make it out if I waited any longer. Gripping the handlebar, I limped forward, pushing through the searing pain in my ankle. It screamed with each agonizing step. Sweat ran down my face, mixing with the cold mist. My breathing turned shallow. My mind went blessedly blank, focused only on putting one foot in front of the other. Getting through. The road began to curve. I followed it, desperate, hoping, and as I rounded the bend, a wave of unbelievable relief washed over me. The fog was loosening its grip. It began to thin out. Vague outlines of trees emerged like ghosts on either side. The road opened up, and my dying flashlight beam penetrated further into the gloom. I moved faster, ignoring the fire in my ankle, the bike suddenly feeling almost buoyant. The shapes in the fog weren't as close now. The murmurs faded, died away. Within a few more steps, I found myself stumbling into a clearer stretch. I could see at least 100 feet ahead. The sky above looked bruised with the first hints of pre-dawn light. I scanned wildly around. No people, no figures. Alone. Truly alone this time. With trembling hands, I turned the key one more time. The bike coughed, sputtered, then roared to life, with a sound sweeter than any music. I almost laughed, a choked, hysterical sound. I swung my leg over, ignoring the screaming protest from my ankle, and revved the engine hard. It sputtered momentarily, then settled into a reassuring rhythm. I glanced back. The fog bank sat there, thick and unmoving. A solid wall across the asphalt, looking almost sentient, brooding, reluctant to let me go. I twisted the throttle hard. The bike leapt forward. I didn't look back again. My head pounded. My eyes watered from the cold air hitting my face. But I pushed ahead, faster and faster. My only thought was escape, putting distance between myself and that grey maw. Within minutes, I left that patch of fog far behind, a receding nightmare in my mirrors. The sky bled color as dawn approached. The road unfurled clean and empty ahead. I glanced over my shoulder one last time. The fog hung there, a static anomaly on the tarmac, sharply defined against the clearing air. Then I turned my eyes forward and focused only on the ride, on the growing light. My heart still hammered against my ribs, trying to batter its way out. My hands shook on the grips, but I kept riding. What was in that fog? Why did it feel so hostile, so predatory? I don't have a neat explanation. I never saw any definite forms up close. Never got any answers. But I know what I heard, what I felt, what I glimpsed in the swirling grey, the steps, the whispers, the chilling presence. They were real to me. Whatever resided there didn't want me. Luck? Timing? I don't know how I escaped, but I know, with bone-deep certainty, I will never ride that stretch of road again. That's it. That's what happened. Laid bare. I can still hear the wet scrape of boots on pavement, the low hiss that rose out of the mist like venom. I still get that cold fist clenching in my gut when I think about it. I'm not looking for belief or sympathy. Just putting it out there, maybe shedding some of the weight. If you ever find yourself on a deserted road late at night and you see a wall of fog where none should be, think twice. Turn around. I sure as hell know I would. The building exhaled quietude when Elias stepped inside, the late afternoon sun slanting weakly through the lobby's tall windows, illuminating motes of dust in the otherwise deserted air. He carried the weariness of the day like a shroud, his only thought to retrieve the document from its upper floor and be done. An ordinary errand. The elevator chimed softly, its doors parting to reveal a vacant steel box. He entered, the scent of metal polish faint in the stillness, pressed the button for his destination, and felt the familiar, gentle hum as the ascent began. A perfectly unremarkable ride. Until it wasn't. A floor blinked past, then another, before an unscheduled halt arrested their progress. The doors slid open onto a corridor utterly devoid of life. No silhouette disturbed its geometry, no footfalls echoed, no expectant shadow stretched towards the opening. Elias peered out, listening. Silence pressed in. Perhaps a mistaken summons, someone changing their mind. He reached for the door close button. Then, the shift. Not a sound, not a whisper of displaced air, yet the cabin's equilibrium subtly altered. The distinct impression of mass entering the confined space. Like the pressure wave preceding someone walking briskly past, but silent, utterly unseen. The weight of the small room felt different. Elias scanned the interior. brushed steel walls reflecting only his own tense face. The neat grid of buttons, the impassive ceiling lights. The hallway remained empty. Before his finger could find the button, the doors sighed shut of their own accord. A knot tightened low in his gut. Imagination? Fatigue playing tricks? He tried to anchor himself to the mundane, watching the illuminated numbers climb, tracking the elevator's resumed journey upwards, but the sensation persisted, an undeniable otherness crowding the small space. He shifted his stance slightly, hyper-aware, listening with an intensity that strained his ears. Nothing, no breath, no rustle of clothing, yet the conviction of proximity, of a silent companion, was suffocating. He jabbed his floor button again, a pointless confirmation. The light stayed lit. Another premature stop, another floor. This time, Elias leaned fully out, his voice unnaturally loud in the void. "Hello?" Silence answered. He strained to hear approaching steps. Nothing. As he moved to retreat back into the car, an invisible impediment blocked his way. Solid pressure met his chest, halting him mid-step. He pushed tentatively with his arm. It encountered resistance, yielding slightly like dense fabric over a firm body. Yet his eyes registered only empty air between him and the control panel. Panic flared, cold and sharp. He stumbled backward as the unseen presence seemed to flow into the elevator with him, forcing him away from the threshold. The doors slid shut, sealing him in with the unknown. Elias flattened himself against the rear wall, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs, palms slick with sudden sweat. He slammed the emergency call button. Dead. Silent. The alarm bell yielded the same hollow lack of response. In desperation, he stabbed at every floor button, praying for any stop, any chance to bolt. But the presence positioned itself between him and the doors, an invisible, impassive sentinel. He could feel its nearness, a chilling density in the air. "Who's there?" His voice cracked. "What is it you want?" Only the low hum of the elevator answered. Hesitantly, he reached out a trembling hand into the space before him. His fingers brushed against something solid, shoulder height. He pushed. It shoved back with startling, immediate force. He tried sidestepping, a desperate crab-like movement towards the controls. An unseen limb pressed hard against his chest, pinning him, forcing him back until the cold metal wall met his shoulders. He hammered the door open button again and again. The elevator ignored his frantic plea, continuing its inscrutable journey. Up, down, direction had lost meaning. He yelled then, raw-throated shouts for help swallowed by the insulated box. The presence remained utterly silent. Lashing out blindly, Elias swung his fist. His knuckles connected with something yielding yet firm. Like dense muscle beneath cloth, the unmistakable shape of a torso. The reaction was instantaneous. Fingers clamped onto his forearm, unseen steel digging into flesh, twisting with agonizing pressure until a cry escaped his lips. He ceased, struggling immediately, and the grip vanished. He sagged against the wall, cradling his throbbing arm. The intercom panel. He wrenched it open. The phone receiver was a dead weight in his hand, the line utterly lifeless. He slammed it back. Escape. He craned his neck, spotting the ceiling hatch, a bolted promise. He reached, straining, fingers scrabbling at the edges, locked tight. As he tried to find purchase to climb, something gripped his ankle, solid and preventing his ascent. He kicked backward, reflexively, connecting hard. The grip released, but he was immediately shoved hard against the wall. His head struck the metal panel. Stars burst behind his eyes. His fingernails scrabbled at the door seams, desperate to pry them open. A tiny gap appeared. He threw his weight into it, straining. An invisible hand seized his wrist, twisting sharply. Pain lanced up his arm, forcing him to release his hold. He tried again, and again the unseen force intercepted him, repelling him with brutal efficiency. His phone. He fumbled it out. No signal bars. Useless. He switched on its flashlight, sweeping the beam around the small cage. Just Elias, his wild-eyed reflection, the mundane interior. He directed the light towards the space where he felt the presence stood. Nothing. Just empty, illuminated air. He swung his keys on their chain, a frantic pendulum. They stopped abruptly mid-arc, striking something unseen. He felt a tug as the presence tried to wrest them away. It succeeded. They clattered to the floor. He snatched them back, heart pounding. He retreated to a corner, breath sawing in his chest. Invisible, uncommunicative, responding only to his attempts at escape or defiance with calculated force. The elevator slowed yet again. The doors parted, only a few inches this time, revealing a sliver of dimly lit hallway. His chance. Elias lunged, throwing all his weight forward. The presence met him, a solid wall of resistance. He fought back, flailing, punching into empty air that wasn't empty. He braced himself against the door frame, shoulders screaming in protest, trying to wedge himself through the narrow opening. One arm, then his head and shoulder squeezed through into the corridor air, blessedly different. He felt a powerful grip clamp onto his ankle, pulling him back. He kicked wildly, his heel striking something hard. The grip loosened momentarily. He surged forward, scraping his back raw against the metal edge. Freedom was inches away. His shirt fabric ripped as the presence grabbed a handful, hauling him backward. He clung to the hallway doorframe, fingers slipping. A desperate gambit. He feigned relaxing, then lunged again with explosive force, gaining precious inches. His waist cleared the threshold. The grip returned to his leg. He stomped down, connecting again. Released, with a final agonized heave, he pulled the rest of his body through. Elias sprawled onto the hallway floor, his knee hitting the tiles hard. He scrambled upright, grabbing a nearby railing, pulling himself clear, just as the elevator doors behind him began to slide shut. His breath came in ragged gasps. He stabbed the hallway call button. The doors reopened. He stared into the brightly lit, utterly ordinary, empty elevator car. No distortion, no shadow, no lingering chill. Just metal and light. He stared, searching, finding nothing. He backed away, hands trembling violently. He pressed the call button again. Doors closed, doors opened. Still empty. A profound ache settled into his muscles where he'd been gripped, shoved. His wrist throbbed, his head pulsed, but he was out. The stairwell sign beckoned. He turned towards it without a backward glance at the elevator, though the phantom pressure of its grip remained, a cold memory on his skin. He pushed through the heavy fire door and began the descent, each footstep echoing in the concrete enclosure. The stairwell felt blessedly solid, blessedly empty. Reaching the lobby felt like surfacing from a deep, dark water. He pushed through the main doors into the evening air, gulping it down. Open, free. He stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, the tension still coiled tight in his shoulders, his shirt clinging damply. He looked up at the building's impassive facade. Some encounters defy explanation, leaving only the scar tissue of memory. He wouldn't report it. He wouldn't seek answers. He would simply never use that elevator again. Turning away, Elias walked, putting distance between himself and the silent, inexplicable violation, profoundly grateful just to be moving under the open sky.